Hi, this is JJ at CCBC. In this video, we'll look at working with selections in Photoshop. Specific topics will be the actual selection tools in Photoshop. And for this video, I'm using Photoshop Creative Suite version 6 on a Mac. Now, before we start making selections with an image, let's take a look at making selections in a text document. A text document is made up of words and sentences, so it's very easy to make selections. All you have to do is click and drag to highlight an area or select a word or sentence you want to make a change to, and then apply that change. So it's really easy to edit a text document. When it comes to editing an image isn't made up of words, it's made up of pixels, and pixels are very small. So it can be much more challenging to select areas within an image. So you need a lot more tools in order to do that, and that's what we're going to look at. So let's take a look at Photoshop. Here I've opened 3 images. I've got an image of the Earth, a basketball, and a really nice Ferrari. And what I want to do is take each of these images, isolate the object in the image, and remove the background so that I can work with just that object. There are other things you may do with selections, like say you had a picture of a supermodel and you wanted to make her eyes emerald green or sky blue. You might not want to eliminate anything, you may just want to select the colored part of her eye and then make some changes to the hue of her eye color. Well, that requires selection skills. Keep in mind, I'm showing you basic techniques. Selecting areas of an image is a skill, and it takes a while and practice to develop it. So keep that in mind when you're watching this video. This is just the basic techniques. So with this image, I want to isolate the Earth. What I need to do before I can make any edits, I have to unlock this layer. So you notice there's a padlock here. I'm going to drag that to the trash can. Now my layer has no padlock, and I can make edits to this image. The first selection tool we're going to look at is what's called the marquee tool. Now if you click and hold on the tool, it'll show you a menu of options if they're available for that tool. I'm going to show you the rectangular marquee tool first. Now obviously our Earth is a circle. A rectangle isn't very useful. So I just click and drag from one corner to the other, and that selects an area. Now if I want to delete this, I can. This gray and white checkerboard is the background workspace for Photoshop to show that this is a clear or empty area of your image. Obviously this isn't what I want for the Earth. I need something round in order to select the Earth. But if you did have something that was rectangular in shape, this would be the ideal tool. So I'm going to undo what I did. Here in the quick launch bar, this is your history. It keeps a list of all the actions you take when working with an image and allows you to back up step by step through your process. So it's a great way of getting unstuck if you happen to do something you don't want to do and you want to undo it. Use the history feature here. So I'm going to close that. So I'm back to just my unlocked layer. Instead of the rectangular tool, I want the elliptical marquee tool. So obviously I can now select this circle, but how do I do that? Well, what it does is it creates an ellipse inside of a rectangular selection. You won't see the rectangle, but that's how the ellipse is defined. So just as I had to click and drag corner to corner to make a rectangle, it's the same corner to corner to make a rectangle with an ellipse inscribed inside of it. So I'm actually going to zoom in a bit. So let's go view, zoom in, make it a little bit easier to work with my Earth. So to define this rectangle that's going to inscribe this circle, this needs to be the top of that rectangle, this needs to be the side, so I'm going to try to estimate where the corner is based on my 2 edges here. So I'm just ballparking it right about there. Click and drag. And again, it takes some practice to get good at this. I'm not super skilled, but I've had a little bit of practice. And let's do like that. There we go. Okay, so you'll notice my selection is a little bit off. What I can do is press the arrow keys to move my selection. So if I press the up arrow key and then the right arrow key, it positions it pretty well. Now it's not the perfect selection. I may want to try again, redo my selection, but I'm just going to stick with this for my video. So now I have the Earth selected. I'm going to go to regular view, so show me the actual pixel size of this image. And if I hit delete, well, that's not what I wanted. I actually deleted the one thing I wanted to keep, and that's because I selected the Earth. That's what I had selected. So what I need to do is reverse my selection somehow. Instead of selecting the Earth, I want to select the universe around it. So I'm going to go to my history list and undo that delete. So I still have my selection here. In my select menu, I can invert my selection. So rather than selecting the Earth, now I've selected the universe around it. And if I hit delete, now I've isolated my image and I have an earth to work with. It's very nice. Right? So objects that are perfectly circular, not circular but elliptical, and objects that are perfectly rectangular, the marquee selection tool works very nicely. Let's look at another tool. Here I know it's an ellipse. We're going to use a different tool. The tool I want to work with is called the Magic Wand tool. So it's located right here. And you'll notice there's two options. There's the Quick Selection tool and the Magic Wand tool. I'm just going to work with the Magic Wand. And what I like about it is that it doesn't select based on shape, it selects based on color. Right? So you'll notice there's a property here called tolerance, and it's set to 30. Basically, if I click somewhere, it takes whatever color I clicked on, and within a certain amount of tolerance around it, it'll select similar shades of that color. So if I select orange and I click here, you notice it selects certain shades of orange within a tolerance of 30. That doesn't necessarily mean a percentage, but it's a very low tolerance. It ranges from 0 to 100. So what I'll do is I'll deselect that, so deselect, and I'll increase my tolerance. Let's kick it up to 60. And I'll click exactly the same spot, and you notice a much larger area has been selected. My tolerance has been increased, so more shades of orange are now being tolerated or allowed as part of this selected area. So I'm going to deselect that. Now, selecting this shades of orange, this isn't going to work very well. If you remember with the earth, I had to select the earth and I just inverted to select the background. Well, here I've got a solid white background. So this actually will be really easy to select because it's just a solid color using the Magic Wand tool. So I'll switch my tolerance back to 30. I don't need a lot for a solid color. And I'll click on the white area, and you notice, boom, does a perfect selection of the white background around this basketball. Before I can delete, I have to unlock the layer. I'll actually hit delete so you can see what happens if you don't unlock the layer. It attempts to fill with some sort of color. Right now I have green as my foreground color, so if I hit OK, it would just turn everything green. Well, I don't want to do that. Let's undo what I just did. Instead, I want to unlock this layer. So I'll unlock it. And now if I hit delete, it just removes what was there. So you can see that gray and white checkerboard background for the Photoshop workspace. All right, so now I've isolated my basketball. I've got a great image to work with. So the Magic Wand tool works really well with objects on a solid color background. The last tool we'll look at is the Lasso tool. Here I've got a Ferrari. Now it's not a rectangle or an ellipse, so I can't use the marquee tool. It's not on a solid color background. There's lots of shades of gray and shadow. It's hard to tell where tires start and shadow begins. So I'm going to need a different tool to work with this. And the tool I'm going to work with is called the Lasso tool. So here's the Lasso tool. There's three of them. There's a freehand lasso tool, polygon, and a magnetic. The freehand lasso tool, it just lets you select an area by hand. So wherever you start, you go back to the beginning, and boom, you have an area selected. Again, I need to unlock my layer, and I can hit delete. All right, so it removes an area. Now, the only problem with this is the mouse on your keyboard, or on your computer, I should say, is not a very good tool for selecting things. It's a very awkward, and you're going to get very inaccurate selecting by using that tool. So I'm going to show you an alternative. Let's undo my delete here. And let's deselect that area. What I'm going to do is switch to the polygon lasso tool. Actually, let's look at the magnetic first, and then we'll switch to polygon. So the magnetic tool, what it does is it looks for a contrast between two areas. So this red edge and this white background have really good contrast. All I have to do is click and drag along that edge, and you notice magnetically it's sticking to it. Now I have to guide it by dragging with my cursor up, but you see it's not perfect in what it does. So if you have an object with really good contrast with its background, you can sometimes get away with the magnetic lasso tool, but not always. So I'm going to click around and find my beginning, close that, and deselect. So the last tool we'll look at is the polygon lasso tool. And what this does is it lets you click, 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 and then go back to the beginning, and click, and it'll close that selection. Doesn't seem like a very useful tool, all right? So I can remove that area. However, it's extremely useful. You might be thinking, I don't want to select anything. You might be thinking, how do I select a curved surface? Like this car has a lot of curves on it. Well, rather than doing long straight lines, you can do a series of very, very short lines using the polygon tool. So what I'm going to do is zoom in on an area. Let's do this back curvy part. And I'm going to zoom in really close. Now this is a technique you can use with just about any image. And that's why I'm showing it to you. The other tools have very limited use. This one can be used for just about anything. So what I'm going to do is select along these edges using that polygon tool. So I'm going to select my tool. I'm going to start up at the top, and I'm going to just kind of click a little bit as I go around. And I zoomed in really close so I can easily see where the red pixels are, where the white pixels are. It's very clear where the edge of the car is and the background is. And I can go through and click a whole bunch. You'll notice this is not a quick process. I'm taking my time. I'm trying to be very precise. But you have to eyeball it. So it's about as far as I can get. I'm going to click out here, out like this, go back to the beginning, boom, and hit delete. Let's view this in actual pixels. It's actually a very small image. Let's zoom in once. There we go. So you can see I've cleared out one area. Get rid of that. Deselect. I've cleared a small area. What I would do is continue this process all the way around the vehicle. This is very time consuming. I can't do this in a 5-minute video. Once I have cleared all the way around the car, then what I can do is select just the car roughly, like this, really quick freehand. And again, we're assuming that I've cleaned out an area all the way around the perimeter of this car the same way I did this back bumper area. And then I could invert the selection and hit delete. And that gets rid of everything. You can even do this as a starting point, deselect, and then slowly get rid of this stuff as you zoom in. So I'll do one more area, this back part of the tire, as an example, and that'll be it for this video. So again, I'll use my polygon lasso tool, click an area where I've already started, kind of work my way around. Sometimes we get a nice straight edge, which will save you a lot of time, but then you hit a nice curve like the edge of this tire. You gotta be slow, careful, take your time. It's a lot of clicking. Here I have to eyeball where I think the tire is. I don't have a very good sense of it. I'm not very artistic, but I can see the red edge underneath. We'll go about that far, and then click outside until I get back to my starting point, and then hit delete. And that cleans up that area. Is it perfect? Not necessarily, but let's take a look. View, actual pixels. That's actually pretty decent. I would have to go through, this may be part of the edge of the car. I may have cut off a little bit too much, but you get the idea. You can repeat this process all the way around the edge of the car and select the whole car. And this process will work for any type of an image, whether it's an owl or a piece of fruit, or any organic, non-geometric shaped object. This is a nice technique for cleaning it up. Unfortunately, it's very time consuming because there's no other tools to really speed up the process for you. So here's where some of the art of selection starts to come into play, versus relying on the tool to do all the work for you. Hope you learned something in this video. See you in the next one.